I'm Patrick, and I'm recovering from the illness of sexaholism. And I'm really grateful to be sharing today, even though there's parts of me that don't want to. Um, I just as we were getting ready, I was thinking that what is this feeling that I'm having right now? Is it like nervousness? And it reminded me a little bit of the feeling of when I've prepared a gift for somebody and I'm giving it to them, and the anticipation of watching them open it. And I don't know, for some reason that I just thought of that, and I felt like spent some time reflecting, and hopefully it was certainly helpful for myself, but hopefully this is a gift back to you as well. And I really appreciate so much this meeting, and um, everyone who makes it happen, and everyone who comes and participates. It's been a real just oasis for me in my life in the last couple of years. So the topic of my discussion today is lust, detox, and love. And I want to begin with a story that I came across last night as I was reading to my 3-year-old his bedtime story. And so I'm just going to share this story with you guys. It's a kid's story, and it starts, Toad baked some cookies. These cookies smell very good, said Toad. He ate one. And they taste even better, he said. Toad ran to Frog's house. Frog, fried! Frog, frog, cried Toad. Taste these cookies that I have made. Frog ate one of the cookies. These are the best cookies I have ever eaten, said Frog. Frog and Toad ate many cookies, one after another. You know, Toad, said Frog, with his mouth full, I think we should stop eating. We will soon be sick. You are right, said Toad. Let us eat one last cookie, and then we will stop. Frog and Toad ate one last cookie. There were many cookies left in the bowl. Frog, said Toad, let us eat one very last cookie, and then we will stop. Frog and Toad ate one very last cookie. We must stop eating, cried Toad, as he ate another. Yes, said Frog, reaching for a cookie. We need willpower. What is willpower? Asked Toad. Willpower is trying hard not to do something that you really want to do, said Frog. You mean like trying not to eat all of these cookies? Asked Toad. Right, said Frog. Frog put the cookies in a box. There, he said. Now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can open the box, said Toad. That is true, said Frog. Frog tied some string around the box. There, he said. Now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can cut the string and open the box, said Toad. That is true, said Frog. Frog got a ladder. He put the box up on a high shelf. There, said Frog. Now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can climb the ladder and take the box down from the shelf and cut the string and open the box, said Toad. That is true, said Frog. Frog climbed the ladder and took the box down from the shelf. He cut the string and opened the box. Frog took the box outside. He shouted in a loud voice, Hey, birds! Here are cookies! Birds came from everywhere. They picked up all the cookies in their beaks and flew away. Now we have no more cookies to eat, said Toad sadly. Not even one. Yes, said Frog, but we have lots and lots of willpower. You may keep it all, Frog, said Toad. I'm going home now to bake a cake. The topic that I wish to discuss today is that of abstaining, withdrawing, or detoxing from a substance, behavior, or activity. Specifically, something that is proven to be unproductive, painful, harmful, or addictive. For me, this would be what I refer to as lust. Lust, from my experience, encompasses a whole range of attitudes, activities, and behaviors. It also happens to be a topic that, because of its personal and private nature, doesn't often get talked about in much depth at a social level. In my experience, it can be awkward, painful, uncomfortable, and even embarrassing to discuss. In my experience, lust can be particularly difficult to discuss with parents, the opposite sex, acquaintances, and professionally. What is lust? I will preface my answer with one disclaimer. I find that in my definition of lust, there exists a considerable tendency towards denial and minimizing. This is because I am still in the process of growing free of lust and lust with a capital L still wants me to take it in. Lust is the following: an overly dominating desire, internal intoxication, losing touch with reality, dissolving into another, seeing others as objects to be consumed, disregard for self-preservation, putting intoxication ahead of safety, sanity, and common sense, stronger than my will, distorted views on sexual intimacy, sex with self, fantasy, drinking in with the eyes, voyeurism or viewing pornography, aggression, abuse, and on and on. When lust is taken through the above activities, there is a change in body chemistry. Not being particularly scientific, I won't try to explain this from a science perspective. Rather, I will explain from my personal experience. The changes that occur include feeling of becoming overwhelmed, feeling consumed, becoming lost in something or someone. It can be calming and exciting, energizing, stressful and chaotic, and sickening. For me, I never quite know how I will react when I take the drug, but the more I take over the years, the less I seem to be able to handle. It can have many functions. It can be a distraction, a form of medication to relieve anxiety, depression, fear, uncertainty, and other painful circumstances. For me, lust became my solution, and it took on many of the forms described above. When I had my first taste of lust, I obviously didn't know what it was. I was about 8 years old. I probably discovered it and used it to medicate loneliness, boredom, fear, and certainly a host of other ideas and beliefs that were not beneficial to my well-being as a young boy. From the very earliest taste, however, there was always a consequence or side effect. First, it was confusion and a feeling of wrongness. Add to that more isolation and fear of being found out. There was guilt and shame, fear that something was wrong with me. Other consequences or side effects of lust include insecurity, social awkwardness, anxiety, distorted view of self and others, sexualizing non-sexual things, loss of productivity, loss of focus, confusion. So this is my description of what lust is, what it does, and why it doesn't work. Why am I talking about lust in the context of recovery and abstinence withdrawal? Because for me, lust has become an addiction. The consequence of taking it in would appear to outweigh the benefit. However, like the alcoholic who can no longer tolerate alcohol and must stop drinking altogether, but is hooked and cannot stop, so it is with the sexaholic or sex drunk who can no longer tolerate lust, but is hooked and cannot stop. This is abbreviated from the White Book of Sexaholics Anonymous. What is the solution? Well, as noted above, a diagnosed sexaholic cannot stop acting out their sexual lust-driven attitudes and behaviors. Without help, that is. What kind of help? I want to jump to the topic of detox and abstinence. A quick lookup of the definition of detox shows me it is a process or period of time in which one abstains from or rid the body of toxic or unhealthy substances. Abstinence is the practice of not doing or having something that is wanted or enjoyable. Why detox and abstinence? Entering into recovery, initially it was pretty clear to me that I wanted and needed to stop viewing pornography in its many forms. Being addicted not only to porn but to lust, I found that I was not able to stop. I was truly powerless, and so I discovered in the following years. As we know, no amount of human will is enough power to stop something as powerful as addiction. And yet I heard this message that I needed to stop in order to recover. This makes some sense, of course. In order to recover, to be restored to sanity, to have right thoughts, and to have freedom of choice in life, I must be free from the compulsion to carry out the obsessive thoughts and behaviors. And I'll read that one more time. In order to recover, to be restored to sanity, to have right thoughts, and to have freedom of choice in life, I must be free from the compulsion to carry out the obsessive thoughts and behaviors. So how do I stop the addiction so that I can start the recovery? Interesting that we often hear this at the beginning of the meeting. We heard it today, stopping before we start something. I've also heard it said that my problem isn't stopping insert drug of choice, it's not starting again. In my recovery journey, I've probably stopped and started 1,000 times. That's a lot. What does this mean? Am I addicted? Am I recovering, or am I recovered? Can I be all three at the same time? And at what point do I go from being addicted to being recovered? My experience has been that I live somewhere in between being addicted and being recovered. And depending on many factors, I can be closer to one than the other. Why does this matter? I think it matters because addiction I think it matters because addiction by nature really is a state of hopelessness. I've been there, it's painful, and there can seem like no way out. Once a recovery begins, hope is born, and I am shown just enough of the path forward to take a step into freedom. Sometimes I can see a little further down the path, and sometimes I can't see it at all. The more I walk this path of recovery, the more I learn to live without my addiction to lust, the more confident I become that my next step will be a step into freedom. But I sometimes step off that path and I step into the darkness. Then I need to find my way back onto the path. You could say that living in recovery is like climbing a mountain or building a house. When I make a mistake, I misplace my footing or miscalculate a measurement, I have an entire structure beneath me and it doesn't suddenly disappear. I may take a step or two backwards, but I don't have to start at square one again. This has been one of the greatest gifts of recovery for me, to know and accept my human imperfection, and to know that when I seek God's will, when I pursue recovery with God, not perfectly but actively, then God is building a structure beneath me. He is renewing me and restoring me to sanity brick by brick, step by step, prayer by prayer. I don't want to give the wrong impression, but I believe that when I stumble or relapse, I act out or drink in lust, that I can look at it two ways. It may be 1,000 steps. I may still be 1,000 steps from recovery, but I'm also 1,000 steps away from total hopelessness and a lifestyle of addiction. In this sense, it can be a gift. I'm reminded not only of how far I still have to go to be 100% dependent on God, but I'm also reminded of how far I've come to be being 100% dependent, how far I've come from being 100% dependent on me. I talked about lust. It could also be workaholism, codependency, substance abuse, shopping, or food addiction, or, lots of other things. I shared a little about the dilemma of coming off my addiction and detoxing from its toxicity in my life. I asked earlier what kind of help I needed. Many of us know that we need spiritual help and we need God. I definitely do more than ever. But is there something I can do right now, something tangible and specific? The Big Book says on page 70, if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. I know that kind of heartache too well, but I have at times used this approach on lust temptation and it works. What is the antidote to lust? If lust takes, it must give. If lust wants, it must not want. If lust burns, it must soothe and calm. Lust dominates, so it must submit. Lust thrives in secrecy, so the antidote must thrive in honesty, transparency, and truth. Lust steals and takes without asking, so the answer must be in giving, holding nothing back. Lust is giving into temptation, and so holding course and not giving up must be the way. Lust is isolation, and so the answer must be fellowship. Lust holds a grudge and never forgets. Love forgives and releases. Acceptance, serenity, submission, honesty, giving, perseverance, unity, forgiveness are the antidote, and love encompasses all these. Paul puts it this way in the Bible. If I give everything I own to the poor and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I don't love, I've gotten nowhere. So no matter what I say, what I believe, and what I do, I'm bankrupt without love. Love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut, doesn't have a swelled head, doesn't force itself on others, isn't always me first, doesn't fly off the handle, doesn't keep score of the sins of others, doesn't rebel when others grovel, takes pleasure in the flowering of truth, puts up with anything, trusts God always, always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps going to the end. That's that's from Corinthians chapter 13. So how can I live in this place? By being reminded of these things regularly and by taking the actions of love. Love is the antidote to lust, but how do I get it? I will end with a section of the Bible from 1 John chapter 4. My beloved friends, let us continue to love each other since love comes from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and experiences a relationship with God. The person who refuses to love doesn't know the first thing about God because God is love. So you can't know him if you don't love. This is how God showed his love for us. God sent his only Son into the world so we might live through him. This is the kind of love we are talking about. Not that we once upon a time loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to clear away our sins and the damage they've done to our relationship with God. My dear friends, if God loved us like this, we certainly ought to love each other. No one has seen God ever, but if we love one another, God dwells deeply within us, and his love becomes complete in us. Perfect love.